moved everything over here. So in past years, I've done a walking tour with everybody, and I've run people ragged through the streets. And again, not the day to be doing this, so it's a good choice to be sitting down in an air-conditioned room. Okay, so I'm a hack. I'd rather use a tour guide any day of the week, but I know just by being here 10 years, 7 months, and 20 days, but who's counting, a little bit about the Luna Park. So if I make an error, please bite your tongue, and let me know afterwards I said something wrong, okay? But I'll give you a quick history of what I understand the history of Coney Island is. First of all, who knows what Coney comes from? Anybody? Yes, first hands.
Comes from the Dutch Rabbit.
Yes, yes. Okay, according to Wikipedia, which we know what a great resource that is, that it was named Bunny Island, Coney Island, by the Dutch because there were massive bunny herds in Coney Island when they landed. Those bunny herds were here to the early 20th century, thank you for the visual, when they were hunted out of existence for the finally. Okay? The local Indian tribe called the Coney Island the land without shade. Yes, makes sense. The land without shade. So fast forward. The original Luna Park was built across the street. It was originally called Sea Lion Park. Changed its name to Luna Park, where it ran until 1944. There were three great amusement parks at that time. There was the original Luna Park. There was Dreamland, where the aquarium is. You're all nodding. I'm saying things right. Thank you.
That was long gone, but
This is more a test to me than a test for you. Thank you. And there was, of course, Steeplechase Plaza, which is now the baseball park. And they all burned down at least once. Yes. Now, do we all know why they burned down?
Made of wood.
Yes, and the other reason. They were made of wood, and the other reason? Correct, they smoked! Life was a big nicotine haze back then. You could smoke on elevators, you could smoke on airplanes, you could smoke on the train. The only place I understand you couldn't smoke was your doctor's office, and that's if your doctor didn't smoke. You remember? Okay. So life was nicotine haze. Of course, they all went up. They all flamed up at least once. The Luna Park burned down for the last time in 1944. Dreamland only lasted 7 years, and I've seen pictures. That thing looked so beautiful and grand. And it burned down. Steeplechase Plaza burned down at least once, and that's when we get the big tilly, okay, face. But it was torn down in 1964 by?
Trump.
Fred Trump.
Correct, Fred. God, what a smart crowd we are. Fred Trump. To build condos that never happened. And so instead, it is the ballpark. Great story about Dreamland. Robert Moses moved the aquarium here because he didn't want an amusement park. Robert Moses hated this place. As you know, the amusement district used to go as far as Brighton Beach and used to go all the way to Seagate. Thank you. He shrunk it, and then he put the low-cost housing in to bury this place. And by the 70s, this place was burning. Okay, and we all know The Warriors. Great movie, The Warriors. Have you two seen The Warriors?
I'm not.
Go see who's seen The Warriors? Anybody? Thank you. Well, if I say, come on, what are we doing?
Come out to Warriors. Come out and play.
It is a young gang film, and it is a metaphor for the Odyssey. You don't know what the Odyssey is? That's okay. Just watch it. Okay. By the way, they did a. If you don't know, they did an extreme run from the Bronx. These runners ran starting at midnight from the Bronx all the way to Coney Island. It's an ultra marathon. It's like 31 miles. God love them. I've done half marathons. I can't imagine running through the streets of New York. No police, no permit. They just run there once a year from the Bronx to Coney Island.
Wow.
It's in the papers. I'm not making that up. Okay, so fast forward. Astroland comes. Now this was Feldman's restaurant, where the hot dog was invented. I understand where the hot dog was invented is now the Tickler roller coaster. And the story is Mr. Feldman wanted to save money. I'm nodding. I know I'm doing right. Wanted to save money, so he didn't want to give his guests knives and forks, so he made the bun to put his sausage in. And the rest is history. Except, fast forward 100 years, a man named Nathan is his busboy. He opens up his own restaurant 2 blocks away. He sells his hot dogs for 5 cents. Mr. Feldman sold his hot dogs for 10 cents. Now, When Mr. Nathan started selling his hot dogs, we think it was around 4th of July, but no one knows because it's over 100 years ago. But there was no restaurant where you see now. He was selling his hot dogs out of a barrel.
Huh.
There was no FDA. So people bought his hot dogs out of a barrel. Eventually, George C. Tilly sold him that land to build his restaurant. Am I wrong?
No. Did
Okay.
Nathan call them hot dogs or Coney Islands? What did he call them?
Coney's.
Red Hots.
Coney Island
Or
Red
Red
Hots.
Hot.
I don't
Red
know.
Hots.
You
Red
know
Hot.
more than I do.
Red
If
Hot.
you go to Detroit, you can buy a Coney dog. Anyway, fast forward, Nathan's, yada yada.
Sorry.
Oh, so Mr. Feldman ran this restaurant and ran the restaurant. Nathan was a marketing genius. He used to. My favorite story is he used to put people in lab coats and stethoscopes to eat in front of his restaurant, so people would think hot dogs were healthy. Anyway, so fast forward. Thank you. Like you found the place. So fast forward. So Mr. Feldman, this becomes the restaurant is torn down. Astroland is built in 1964, and it runs till 2008. Whoever was at Astroland when it was opened, I understand that its theme was the future. But I came here for the first time in 1994. This place was a pit. It had run itself into the. It was a trip into the past, let's say. There's a great documentary I highly recommend called Last Summer in Coney Island that documents the last years of Astroland, and it ends on a very depressing note. Thor Equities chased them out of here. Thor Equities is promising a year-round mega park from the cyclone to the parachute jump. The city sold the land at a very reasonable rate. And in 2009, this was an empty lot because Thor Equities didn't do a dang thing. They had no intention, obviously, of building an amusement park. They wanted the city to change the zoning laws to build condos. The Bloomberg administration steps in 2010, buys the land back from Thor Equities. I don't know the exact number, but they sold it at a loss. The city lost over $10 million just by Thor Equities making their promise. But the good news is the company I work for, Perla, stepped in and built this main section in 100 days. You can find it on a YouTube video. So that is just this section here, 100 days.
Huh.
Next year we expand into the Scream Zone, and then following year we expand. We built the Thunderbolt roller coaster in 2014. We are now also building a log flume that looks very similar to Shoot the Chute, and a new roller coaster, which is crazy behind schedule because of COVID and supply chain problems. But hopefully it will open in the near future. If you've had a chance walking back from the B&B Carousel, I hope you saw it or you'll see it before you leave. It will open very, very soon. And we also have ropes course coming. Yes.
Since the Italian ownership,
Yes.
all of this has been under Mr. Valperga.
Zamperla.
Excuse me?
The Zamperla family.
Zamperla.
Now the Zamperla family is a ride manufacturer. So if you go out here, you're gonna see almost all the rides here are Zamperla made. If you end up, when you next time you go to Six Flags or Disney or Hershey, I do this because I'm in the business. I look and I'll see the Zamperla name on some rides.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so they're one of the largest global ride manufacturers. If you ever get a chance to go to IAAPA, which is the biggest conference for the amusement industry, where they literally have rides running in this big conference hall to be for sale. You'll see the Zamperla booth, which is the most impressive booth I've ever seen in my life. It's 2 stories. On the top floor, they serve you wine because they're making $1 million deals to sell roller coasters.
All right.
All right. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
They're also European, right?
Well, they're based in Vincenza.
Yeah, they have a European operation.
Yeah, well,
correct?
they're global.
Here's a question. The cyclone, is that independent of the
No,
Zamperla?
we took over. Zamperla took over. Luna Park took over operation of the Cyclone in 2011. Now we don't
all right.
own it outright, but we have it
Okay.
leased
Finally.
for like at least another 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we took it over in 2011. Since then, we replaced over 4,000 pieces of wood. Gave it its first paint job since 1977. And the old timers complain it feels too safe.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
It's still rolling.
It's still rolling. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming to speak for us. In modern terms, can you tell me where is the footprint of the elephant?
Oh my goodness gracious! I have a picture in my office. I believe it's by a little past Stillwell, on the left-hand side, not too far, I guess we're from, no, Footprints, the restaurant Footprints. How am I doing, am I right? Anybody else?
It's north, it was north of
Brian
Surface.
Merlis.
Little closer?
It was
Okay.
around probably closer to Mermaid Avenue.
So more like we're,
Sorry.
where is it, Texas
Maybe
Burgers,
around 20th
right?
Street,
Okay.
around there.
Foxy, or the Foxy Club, there we go, okay.
So
Right,
20th and.
Around 20th and Mermaid.
Well,
and
20th
Mermaid.
20th is a little farther down.
Yeah.
And
that's
was
what I
that a
was thinking.
permanent
Club.
stable?
But is
The
there-
elephant.
It was down, it was not in the.
I have a
not
picture in
like
my office, you wanna come take a look at.
Oh.
So, is there anything like a restaurant or some marker that I could be standing at and I can point and say the elephant
You know,
was
that's
here, there?
a funny thing, a lot of tour guides, the biggest complaint I get from tour guides when they come down to give tours is you always hear the phrase, "This used to be."
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
This thing over here used to be. So we've done such a really, Charlie Dennison, which is, runs the Colonial History Project, is probably the best person to chat with.
Right.
But as far as I know, there are no markers for anything.
Okay, and second, I know it's in Brooklyn, but was this where we had the Nellie Bly amusement park? I know that
Nellie
was.
Bly
No, it
is
was-
now
it's
Ventures, and that's by Caesar's Bay.
State
Yeah,
Parkway,
yeah.
the Belt Parkway.
Yeah, so it's not.
now-
It's on the way here.
Not there.
Never, that's Gravesend. While it is confusing, it made people probably pass it thinking it's Coney Island.
Yeah.
It's not Coney Island.
So it was never a.
Never
Never
marked.
been
No.
there.
Yeah, I thought the same thing though.
Thanks, yeah.
And Jeff, where was the steeplechase racetrack? Where
Steeple
was it?
Chase Racetrack is where the baseball park is now.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I've seen that. Gosh bless me. Back in the day when you rode those rides would never pass inspection today. When you rode those rides, you just held. There was no straps. You just held on for dear life. Because back then, when you broke your leg in an amusement park, guess what you did? You just went home. You went home, and the ride kept running. So now, if gosh forbid someone gets hurt, you have to. That ride shuts down. There's an investigation. There's got to be inspection. Even if there isn't, like if somebody's in an emergency
Just running
stop,
the lecture
you
tonight.
can't keep running that ride. The inspectors have to come out and inspect the ride. Safety is the number one priority in any amusement park in North America. We take that really serious here. Statistically speaking, according to IAPA, you are 7 times more likely to be hit by lightning than to be injured in an amusement park. In North America. Carnival, you're on your own. Okay.
Wow.
Any other questions? All right, it is an absolute pleasure for you all to be here. If anybody would like to go on a ride, okay, see me. I have a card for you. I'm going to get services. Okay, I'll have a card. I'm going to fill out a form for one ride. Okay, but we'll take care of you. Okay, at the end of your meeting. Okay, thank you all.
I said it's called the cyclone.
I'm doing the cyclone.
Hey, Jeff, I'm-
I'm doing the cyclone.
All right, thank you.
First call.
I'm sorry, I was.
First call. First call? Oh, yeah. Put me down,
Every
bro.
spring, every spring.
Put me down. Hey.
Hey, guys, I made it.
Welcome.
And I
Welcome.
brought some special guests. I'm sorry, I'm gonna embarrass them right now. It's my husband and my son are here. And my mother-in-law and my daughter are looking for a restaurant. So anyway, so thank you all for your patience. Thanks for moving everybody here. Before I got here, we slept all the way out to the carousel.
Air conditioning.
Yes, air conditioning, very, very important. So it looks like we're gonna have a good meeting tonight, a small number, but we get rides, which is good, and we have sodas. And we're nice and cool right now. So thank you all for coming out. Just to welcome everybody, I'm sure you all, I hope you all got a look at the agenda. Great hearing from Jeff. I just have a few things to report on before we get to our guest speakers. So first things first, the AGM, our annual general meeting, will be on a Tuesday, not a Wednesday. So it'll be on Tuesday, September 6th. All right, Tuesday, September 6th. This is because we're being hosted by the Salmagundi Club, and they have a Wednesday event.
Very good.
They have a Wednesday event. I'm going with Bob and Beth. We're gonna check it out. I'm a Salmagundian, so we got a deal, and we'll be able to visit the club before the meeting. So we're gonna arrange that, so we can visit the club before the meeting. One thing, a little bit about the Salmagundi Club, it's open to the public. You can go there when it's the regular opening hours, and you're welcome to hang out there. And if anybody wants to meet me there for happy hour Friday, just come there. So, anyway, so that's the Salmagundi Club, so again, that'll be on September sixth, which is a Tuesday, same time, starting at 6 o'clock, so we'll be at the Salmagundi. Next thing, any committee chairs here, your budgets are due on Sunday, August 14th, that's next Sunday. Alright, so because the board will be meeting on the 15th, and if you don't get your budget in, you don't get any money, nothing, zero. We'll give you something, but the board decides what you get, alright? So make sure you send in your budget on time. Another thing about, one of our lovely members, Joe Spalak, our guiding spirit guide was, he was ill again, he's, getting better. I know some people have gone to visit him, I put up the announcement in the GANYC Facebook group, but Joe loves hearing from people. If you'd like to send him, an email, if you'd like to give him a call, I have his number, I've got all the information, he loves it, he just loves texting people too. And he has had a few people visit him, I think Anne, you went to visit him?
No,
Joe
not
Spalak,
yet.
who went to see, yes, Beckman. Lee Hounding went to visit him, he was doing a lot better. And Rita, yeah, went to see him. So he likes having visitors, and he likes, getting messages. Another, GANYC member, and also, familiar to all of you, Jack Eichenbaum, Queensborough historian, he was not doing well during COVID. He was having problems getting around, he was getting very depressed and very flu. But anyway, he's back and he's, raring to go. So Jack would love to hear from anybody as well. I saw him at the observatory, he came up last week, Mike Michelle, former Manhattan Borough historian, brought him up there, and he was great. He was in fine fellow, he was cornering school groups and telling them about Queens. I mean, he was just like Jack. And so he'd been through a really sort of low moment. So it's nice he's back. If anyone wants to get in touch with Jack, much appreciated. Finally, tomorrow, August 4th at noon, at the New World Stages, which is on 50th Street, the NYPD, members of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and the Times Square Alliance are having a meeting to discuss how to work together to ensure the safety of visitors and workers and people who are coming to visit Times Square. Now, GANYC board members, we're all very busy, we're all busy these days, so I don't think we can have board representation. Harvey's gonna attend, yeah, but if anyone else would like to attend, GANYC works very closely with the Times Square Alliance, and so we'd love to have people go and to, report back to us, to let us know how it went. Harvey will be giving us, of course, a formal report, but we just like to know how everything is going. So that is that is tomorrow at noon, on the New World Stages, 340 West 50th Street in Theater 2. So it's NYPD, Times Square Alliance, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to talk about safety in Times Square. So it could be an interesting, important thing for people to find out about. Okay, so that's really all I have. Okay, Dave?
To refresh my memory, please, when was that budget deadline you said was?
On the 14th, so next Sunday. So the 14th at noon, right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Yes, at noon. Okay. So you should have received you will have received an email. And committee chairs, please report your budget.
Just a point of order, we have not asked for approval of the agenda, nor have we asked for business.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Point of order from our parliamentarian. Any additions or changes to be made to the agenda? I didn't ask about that. The agenda okay with everyone as it stands? All right. And any new business that would like to be added? Anything that's missing from the agenda that members would like to discuss? Okay, thank you for that, Patrick. All right, John?
I will make a small correction that I was not aware of. Bob Gelber will be giving the awards.
Okay, Bob Gelber will read the awards committee report. Okay. All right. Well, then that is all I have. And so we're going to have our guest speaker will be introduced by Mark Landman, who actually should be removing his hat.
More for you.
It's for you or for me, thank you. All right.
I like the hat too. Tonight's speaker over there, Brian Merlis, and I have a mutual friend who's Castaldo have known each other since kindergarten, which means that we've been trading birthday cards for 6 decades. It's a long time. All right. Lewis and Brian met at a coin show at the Golden Gate Motor Lodge. If anyone remembers that place. He had favorites postcards with him, and they became fast friends. That was in the 70s, and they are still friends today. Brian is a piano player, a collector of all sorts of items, including coins and postcards, an amateur historian, a retired high school history teacher. Teaching at Midwood and Canarsie High School, he's written over 20 books on Brooklyn, and is a Tilden High School graduate. His latest book is Historic Black Brooklyn, 40 Years of Hope and Struggle. I will leave the facts of the books to him, including his collaborators and co-writers. The program, in my humble opinion, will be very entertaining. More information on him is facebook.com/Brian Merlis and nycphotos.com, which is
I'm
actually...
gonna give out my card to everyone.
Gave out the card, so everyone has more information than I have on him. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me, Mark, Bob Gilbert. And I do know Mark, but we haven't seen each other probably since Nixon was president. Does everybody have my business card?
Yes.
Okay, some people do not. And I was also giving out a couple of premium items. You can leave your phones on. Because mine, does anybody want you want one? Like another? Yeah, look at this, Ebbets Field. You can hand those out. And these are actually the best color pictures of Ebbets Field I've ever seen. Limited edition to this. Anyway, we can leave the lights on until we turn them off.
Oh, thank you.
So, oh yeah, just getting back, this is, we're talking about the gentleman before, director, was talking about the original Luna Park. Here it is before the 1944 fire.
Wow. Oh, nice.
So, anybody wants to see this picture, I had 2 entrances on Surf Avenue. And that's the other one next to the Lamarcus, L.A. Thompson Scenic Railway.
Oh, look at that.
So these are from 1942. They're not colorized. These are actual color photographs. Although a lot of the photos we use for the covers of our books, we hire an artist to colorize. And let me tell you a little bit about myself, which is not that exciting. But I started putting out books. I started collecting stuff maybe like 40 years ago in Brooklyn, New York, and pictures and negatives and all that stuff. And just to, I brought some of the other titles I've done. Like this is colorized, my books on East Flatbush, Breezy Point, we went into Queens. I have 3 books on New York City, Manhattan, New York County. Sheepshead Bay, I did, that's out of print, that's a collector's item. Park Slope, Clinton Hill, Windsor Terrace, includes Kensington and Parkville, which nobody wants to have a tour of. Flatbush, Battlefield to Ebbets Field, Bensonhurst, Bath Beach, and New Utrecht, Brooklyn's Bushwick and East Williamsburg. I did a book on Williamsburg, it's out of print. New York City subway book out of print. Hold your applause. Greenpoint sold out. East New York sold out. Flatland sold out. Midwood sold out. For anybody who wants to go back to the old neighborhood, we got a book on Brooklyn's historic Brownsville through the years.
Oh, wow.
Bay Ridge and Fort Hamilton. So they said that I am the most prolific living author of Long Island history.
Wow. Oh, very good.
But Brooklyn is Long Island, so. But I live in Nassau County, I live in Freeport. It's a lot like Brooklyn. So, and then I hate the history, those little Arcadia books, but Bob Furman talked me into doing a book with him on Brooklyn Heights, done by the History Press.
Yeah.
And we did this, and it was just horrible working with him. What can I tell you? Right?
Where is he now?
I don't really know. I don't give a shit. I think he's living on Roosevelt Island.
Okay.
So, whatever. Anyway, let's talk about Black Brooklyn. Alrighty. I think I told a black friend of mine to show up here, so it would seem like it was a little integrated. Where is he? Where is he? I don't want to embarrass anybody. Anyway, you're all my friends. This was a 2-year collaboration with Dr. Clarence Taylor, PhD professor at Baruch, and he's lectured, he's always on TV, being interviewed. And I met his wife teaching at Midwood High School in the late 80s, and she told me, she said, my husband's writing his thesis on the black churches of Brooklyn. I said, well, I'd love to meet him, have him come over. I was living on West 2nd and Z in Gravesend, and he came over and we met. And we stayed in touch on and off for 35 years. And I wanted to do a book on Bed-Stuy, but I also wanted to do Ocean Hill, and I said, and then at Weeksville, all that history. I said, let me just do something on Black Brooklyn in general, because I have a tremendous photo archive. Not too many of you have been to my house/museum, but it's just packed. JoJo was over twice in the past month, right? Do I have a lot of crap? So I went through all my Brooklyn pictures, and I tried to find pictures with black people in them, because you don't see too much. You see a lot of Manhattan, the same things from Culver and Getty on the documentaries, Finding Your Roots. It's usually the same pictures over and over again. So I put all these pictures and I said, we're gonna do something going back 400 years. Now photography only goes back a small percentage of that time. So we went and we got engravings and we started writing the book, which is over 100 pages of text. And Clarence really specializes in the churches and the civil rights aspect of it, where I'm more of a neighborhood guy. And we go through this book, everything from Shirley Chisholm to U.B. Blake to Jackie Robinson. But it's not about the famous black people of Brooklyn. It's about the people, the regular people, how they live, what their lives were like. And basically, the lives of the regular people paralleled the lives of the white people of Brooklyn. Everybody was basically trying to just get by. It was a real struggle for everybody. And of course, black people face special challenges, especially in the days of slavery. But the first blacks arriving here were not slaves, and they came right down, right over there past the beach, on the boats, as people on the boats, and people who wanted to settle. And they did, and they bought land, and they were prosperous, several of them. In fact, one gentleman we speak about helped found the town of Bushwick, which includes today's Williamsburg and Bushwick and South Bushwick, that whole area. And he was on the militia to defend Bushwick, because they were getting invaded by the English over in Newtown across the creek. That's over the Kosciuszko Bridge, the old one. Okay, so there's Clarence and I. Who can point out where I am and where Clarence is? Can we do that? Okay, next page. Oh, can we close the lights now? Thank you so much. Oh, I like it, very intimate. My dedication, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Wilhelmina Rose Kelly was a great friend of mine, and John Lewis. 3 people very close. Next. We're going to go through some of the book, just to give you a general idea, although I did have the book sent around. Some people saw it before the event. I did bring some copies to sell. I don't take credit cards, but if you look honest, I'll take your credit card number and we'll run it. The last event I went to, I lost, I don't know, 3 bucks, 3 cards were deadbeat cards. So, a little bit shaky, a little jittery about it. We go back to the early settlements on Long Island. Here's where we are now. Right here, when Coney Island was actually an island. It's actually an island in the town of Gravesend. And black settlers came in New Utrecht, in Bushwick. And then starting in the 1820s, slaves were needed to build up these, these nascent towns and villages. Next page, Anna. Ann? Ann. Thank you, Ann. And we talk about, we have the census of slaves of a number of the towns in there. We're skipping pages, by the way. That's James Ford, and then we write about him in the book. He was an inventor of machines that made sails, like at the South Street Seaport. He was basically in Philadelphia, but he was in the Wallabout prison ships during the Revolution. Okay, next. And this is actually a Brooklyn newspaper called the Long Island Star with an ad for a slave. The lighthouse, of course, still stands in Flatlands on 36th Street, number 1940. And we illustrate the book. We had to get these pictures to make sense. We just didn't want to throw up all the pictures in like they do in Arcadia. They just throw all these pictures in and somebody's an author. We had to organize this whole thing. It took us over 2 years. We had an editor that worked with the content, and then we had Ricardo Gomes lay out the book. Is that him now? I'm speaking at an event. I'll call you back. Thank you. Okay, you got it. Next. Thank you, Ann. This is actually one of the earliest pictures I've seen of a black man working on a farm. It's the Vanderveer farm in Flatbush, which, if you know Brooklyn College, that area around there, in the southern part of Flatbush, overlapping into Flatlands by like Newkirk Avenue, near where the Vanderveer houses are, where Barbara Streisand once lived when she was a kid. And we talked about the free blacks that faced challenges. And many of them owned businesses. Some of them were professionals. One gentleman bought a house in Brooklyn Heights. Next page. Civil War, Henry Ward Beecher. And we used illustrations that were prior to photography, although Vogelsang was a photograph in the Massachusetts Historical Society. And that's where slaves and free blacks, actually free blacks since 1863, took refuge during the draft riots of 1863. And they were not attacked. And that Emancipation Day was also, it was like Juneteenth in Myrtle Avenue over there. Next. Transition period, 1860s, post-Civil War. A lot of black people entered the civil service. Teachers, some of them became pharmacists. There was an educated class. There was actually an elite that controlled a good amount of monetary property in Williamsburg and near Weesville, which was basically a settlement of freed slaves that had worked at the Lefferts farm by Fulton Street near Nostrand and Bedford Avenues in that section there. Any questions so far?
I do.
Yes.
Is there any black people who own slaves?
I couldn't find any black people owning slaves, but I know in the South there have been instances of black people owning slaves, and there's been instances of white slaves in the United States. Next. Booker T. Washington came and spoke at the, I wonder why that's red. The book's in black and white. Go figure. He addressed at the Church of Our Savior in Brooklyn Heights on Pierpont Street and Monroe Place, and we have an illustration of him. But people would come here. Brooklyn was a hub. It was a real cultural center. Prior to the Harlem Renaissance, there was something I call the Brooklyn Movement, and there was a lot of meetings, and there was shows, and there was musicals. Many of them were sponsored by the church, but there was also people's houses. They would have meetings there, you know, poetry readings. There was a lot of culture in the upper echelon of the black community. And we discovered a lot of this through newspapers and other documentation. Next. Black schools started very early. Kroger, around the early 1800s. And then soon there was colored schools in Brooklyn and the regular schools. But they were not exclusively segregated. You had white children attending colored schools. They might not have wanted to walk a mile to the regular school, so they went to the colored school, and vice versa. You had black kids in the white schools, so it was not, they wouldn't kick you out. As it was, attendance was horrible back in the 1800s. It was prior to the the introduction of compulsory education, which came later. So the attendance was low, so, you know, people went to school. Next. And this is the annual examinations, maybe like the Regents exams for primary school. They didn't have high schools then. So these are the 13 schools, and on the bottom you see colored schools at Willoughby and Raymond, which is by the old Raymond Street Jail in Fort Greene, and Carvesville, which is a little bit southeast of Weeksville, not far from maybe Easton Parkway near Buffalo Avenue, sort of in Ocean Hill. And this also shows the location on an atlas, on the Bromley Atlas, where the colored school was, right next to the Raymond Street Jail, which is pretty famous, and they knocked it down around 1960. Okay, yeah? Charles Dorsey was principal of public school number 67. And we find the school here in the 1886 atlas. We go into real detail in terms of where things were precisely. Somebody asked me where the Elephant Hotel was. I just Googled it, I looked it up. Surf Avenue and West 12th Street. So it wasn't on 20th, it was closer to us. But it was definitely on the north side of Surf Avenue. You see pictures of it. And Surf Avenue was called the Concourse back then. It wasn't called Surf Avenue. Okay, next. There's an integrated school in 1903 in GANYC, where you had a substantial black population. And the book is done by neighborhood. We cover Flatbush, we cover Gravesend, we cover GANYC, we cover Williamsburg, we cover Weeksville, Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene. The Black Belt, it was known. It was the Myrtle Avenue Black Belt, which really, the blacks were a minority there. So why it was called the Black Belt? Probably because more black people were there than most of the other parts of Brooklyn. So people who gave it the name Black Belt were probably white. They saw like 4 people who were black. They said, okay, this must be the Black Belt. Okay, next. And we show, these are all pictures, 95 at least % of the stuff is from my collection. So this stuff is never before published. And this book just got an award with several others. You know, the New York Society Library gives history awards. They had about 175 applicants. There were 4 winners. Our book was one of the winners. We were there in May, and we had an awards presentation. Clarence came in from Syracuse, and the other winner was Colson Whitehead for Harlem Shuffle. He did his thank you on a screen because he was touring on the West Coast. And Debbie Applegate, who wrote a book 8 years ago on Henry Ward Beecher, won the Pulitzer Prize. This book was about a Polly Agger, who was a famous madame. Madam, right, she was a madame. So I met her. I would have liked to have met Colson Whitehead, but you know, we had a really good time. My girlfriend Pam came along. Well, I schlepped my mom to Queens. And pictures that I thought told a story, you know, more than writing does. You know, and you know, there's a few other books on Black history in Brooklyn, and some of them are really scholarly, but they're not graphic. You know, they're very, very tough to read. This particular book on Black Brooklyn really gets into the meat and potatoes through graphic proof of who was living in Brooklyn, what people were doing. Next, man. Here's a soldier going up to muster for World War I. These guys are already in uniform, and this guy's on his way. This is Fort Hamilton Parkway, 99th Street. I read the street sign on the pole, so I know where it is. These are World War I soldiers. These guys are building the Brooklyn Army Terminal. Apparently they had a black gang that were actually working as a group. This woman is working, says Coney Island on there on the subway. There's a public domain image, by the way. I don't know in the negative. But men were out to war, so women fulfilled the jobs of men, and also was part of the beginning of the Great Migration around World War I, because jobs were available as a lot of men were out fighting, including blacks. And this is a woman of color sweeping a subway, keeping it clean for those people on the way to Brooklyn or Coney Island. They had a nightclub scene, mostly along from Eastern Parkway down to around Fulton Street. There was a number of good jazz clubs, and famous performers were there. And I have a couple of pictures there with Lloyd Price, and this is also the Club Cornet. Next. There was a labor movement in Brooklyn. People working at the Colonial Laundry. This is the old Lexington Avenue L, which isn't there anymore. It came down in 1953. Brooklyn had a Lexington Avenue L. Some people don't even know Brooklyn has a Lexington Avenue. And these people are waiting to get a job right around the wartime in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, a nice little motorcycle there, and you see it's black and white people struggling together, getting along. Next. National Negro Citizens Affairs Committee. First black woman to picket for a job at Woolworths, right here at 1244 Fulton Street. The Labor Party, Henry Wallace ran. He was like a Bernie Sanders type from 1948. So he got all the young people in, and they had actually the Bedford-Stuyvesant headquarters, smashed Jim Crow, right over there. I couldn't find the exact address of this. I looked and that has yet to be discovered, but it's right over there, probably on Fulton, that's my guess. And then we talk about World War II and the post-war years. People came back and there was a lot of problems, but the civil service was open. And people took steady jobs, the subway, police department hired a lot of black people after the war, you know. Others went to the post office, other people went into the private sector, working. Just like everybody else, just like the white people. You know, that's what surprised me. You know, I always had these misconceptions, and I started looking at the pictures and looking at the documents. Yeah, there was special challenges, yeah, there was some animosity, but for the most part, it was a struggle that was shared by all the people living in Brooklyn. One more. People working maybe at A&S, downtown department store. People working over here in the Myrtle Avenue L. Conductors. Fulton, people working trolley jobs. And then we talk about the black belt, which we basically smashed the black belt theory. It was maybe, in reality, we're right here. Predominantly Irish working class neighborhood. Blacks constituted 3% of that population in 1860. And then by 1900 it was 10%. But still, that was a substantial population. And it was a poor area down by Vinegar Hill, Navy Yard, Myrtle Park Avenues where the BQE runs today, where nobody wants to be in traffic. And this is the ward maps going back, 1860, and then we have this, and we use Dr. Robert Swan's references, as he did a phenomenal book on black history. Back in the 70s, he did a whole study of it, so we sourced a lot of his material. Next. This is actually a Spanish-American war parade on South Portland Avenue. And this guy came by bike. It's very green even back then. These ladies are shopping along Fulton Street by Hanover Place. Dressed to the max. But you gotta watch out for all that horse crap in the street back then. Next. Crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, watching a fire sort of die out. Next. Williams Stationery. This woman runs a store. This kid's sitting on Willoughby. 1915, 1927. You don't see this. Most of the pictures you see are after the migration. You know, you don't see this stuff from the early 1900s. It had to be out there. It had to be shown. You know, because what they show on Finding Your Roots is the same old picture all over again. The same picture that Getty sends for $500. Next. This couple ran this pharmacy, and he was very close to Du Bois. I read about him. They opened in 1922 and served the community until the 50s, right on Hudson Avenue. An elevated train ran over there. Then it went up to Flatbush Avenue, and then hooked down Fifth Avenue, went down to Bay Ridge. Fifth Avenue L came down in 1940. None of us here remember it. And they sponsored a summer trip for the hot days. Look at this, day off to cool off. They got a little bus, and they got black and white kids, everyone from the neighborhood. And they sponsored it, the Earls. And that's a close-up of the picture. And his wife was also, Florence, was a registered nurse. Next. This is after the Manhattan Bridge was overhauled. Ulan Jack was the first black Manhattan borough president with Robert Mayor Wagner. But since, even though it's Manhattan borough president, I'm going to put him in the book because this is on the Brooklyn side. That's why I put the picture. But I have some pictures of Queens and a couple maybe that refer to Lower Manhattan. You know, if it's really connected to the text, I used it. That's down on Washington Street. Look at this, a jury. I don't know how they allowed somebody to take a picture of this jury, but this is a Brooklyn jury in 1950. Yeah? I had to have something on the Institute of Islam, which was down over there by State Street, which is, I think, still there. It was the first mosque, and this guy was a very important guy over there, Sheikh Dawood Ahmed Faisal, and people are praying over there, so I guess they're facing east, so I guess we can figure out what direction that room was in. Okay, next. And then just pictures that were in my collection, just showing people living their day-to-day lives. She looked a little camera shy though, right? What do you think? No, don't take my picture. So these were all, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, next. This is the school, the Geo store, the George Westinghouse Vocational High School down on Tillery Street. This guy's testing the air quality in Dumbo in 1970. That's Lafayette Avenue. The book goes on. It's 4 pounds. Like this book, you can kill somebody with. That's why when you're going over there to check safety in Times Square with your tour organization, bring up either a pistol or bring one of my books. Okay, next. This is 9/11. Photo by Anders Goldfarb, a good friend of mine, who's been photographing Brooklyn since probably the early 70s. I wanted to put more contemporary stuff in there, and that's by Metrotech, showing everyone's reaction over there. Okay? Then we get to Central Brooklyn, Clinton Hill, Bed-Stuy, Ocean Hill. And we go back to Weeksville. This map is actually in my office, but it's this big. It's one of those on a wooden roller, 1849 map. And we get to Weeksville, we talk about Joan Maynard, who helped preserve Weeksville, and Howard Cullen Orphan Asylum, and when we map where the settlements were, where the Hunterfly Road came down, which was a historic road. It was an old, one of those Indian trails that turned into a road, and there's still a couple of pieces of it left throughout Brooklyn. It connected with Kings Highway, it was part of the old system. Yeah? This is a great shot from a lantern slide of Albany Avenue. I don't know if there's any black people in the picture, but I wanted to show the character of that area by Carville and Weeksville prior to the laying out of the streets when they leveled it. It was very rugged. And during the Revolution, that was one of the challenges of the English and also the Americans. There was only a few places you could go over those hills. One was the Flatbush Road, the other one was like the Hunterfly Road. Because you had these hollows, you had these hills, and you had the trees and woods, and you had to move cannons and all that other stuff. This was not an easy thing. People just think, oh, you're chasing the British? Okay, we'll make the left on Avenue I, make a right on Schenectady Avenue, and you get it. No, this is what it was like. So this is actually the original wooden school, PS 91, and then it was replaced by a brick structure in 1903. Marty Markowitz went to the school. It's right over there by East Empire Boulevard, near Malbone Street, which is somewhere not far from where this is, Albany Avenue. You're looking south down the hill into Flatbush, and that's the Kings County Hospital buildings over here. So this is probably the late 1890s. You don't see images like that. Okay, next. This gentleman's working in a pharmacy. I don't know who was in charge, but they were located right over there. It was called the Pierce's Pharmacy, and it is spelled P-E-I-R-C-E. I checked the directories because the spelling was unusual. This guy's working at the Ice Palace, and he's dapper in that uniform. That was over there by Bedford and Atlantic, the Brooklyn Ice Palace. They played hockey there and everything. It's on the northeast corner, right over there in the Fort Greene section. Next. Couple other, this is the Brooklyn College of Pharmacy. Graduation photo, 1901. Hancock Street, Bed-Stuy, nice integrated group of kids. Next. During Prohibition, you had all these clubs, associations. They had dance. They had put out dance cards, and they had entertainers. They had black and white entertainers coming in, and that was about the time that the Latin music craze was coming in with Ricky Ricardo. You know, the Latin beats, and I don't know about bossa nova. I'm just checking my meter time. We got a half an hour. We got half an hour. Chill. Next. Oh, look at this. Apex Beauty Salon. Carlotta's National Academy of Beauty Culture at 1045 Fulton Street, Brooklyn. Where are you going to find this stuff? Only in my house, in my living room. Okay, next. I got people that do like documentaries and stuff, and they usually find me at the end because I'm under the radar. And they say, we were at the Brooklyn Historical Society, we went here, we went there. They hardly had anything. Where'd you get all this stuff? Like, Jojo, what happened when you saw my Harlem stuff? And I don't even really collect Manhattan. I had a lot?
A lot, but it's very rare, and it's just stuff that you wouldn't find anywhere.
It's weird stuff. It's fair enough. This is the Bedford Theater. This is where Al Sharpton was actually ordained as a minister by Bishop Washington. Bishop? Was it Bishop? Yeah, Frederick Douglass Washington, his wife, Madame Ernestine. It was the Bedford Theater, and then it became the Washington Temple, which it is today, on Bedford Avenue. And Brooklyn has its own Apollo Theater right over there on Fulton, just in case. This is poverty in Brooklyn, and it's probably a photo used to promote the construction of public housing in the 30s. This woman's eating cornflakes here, and she's also breastfeeding a baby. Somebody told me that, and I said, you know what, something you're right. I didn't want to look too close, so I wanted to give her privacy. Northwest corner, Franklin and Madison, trolley scenes. A lot of these pictures are taken by trolley buffs. So as they eliminated trolleys in the 40s and 50s, these guys wanted to get there before they stopped it and replaced it with a bus. So they went in every corner and took pictures of trolleys. Thousands and thousands of pictures were taken. You know, I bought shoe boxes of negatives, but most of them aren't that sharp. I had to get the best ones and find the ones that were interesting. Ann? By the way, Ann is doing a great job. Thank you. They're protesting the cost of meat after the war. People in the neighborhood, black and white people together, people buying meat. This guy's gonna buy steak, I bet. It looks like he makes a good buck, so with his hat and everything. Okay, and by the way, I give their names. I have the names of those people. Fred Bums at the Theodore Market, Nostrand Avenue. Okay, next. Couple of nice scenes. That's a great one. Look at this, Brett. Look at this. This was like, in 1960, this was like considered like a slum probably by most people. Now look at this thing. This is like a 30-foot wide brownstone. It would probably be like $6 million now on Washington Avenue in Clinton Hill. Look at that thing. Unbelievable. This is the famous blizzard of December 47, which was about 2 feet of snow in New York. Okay, next. Billy Graham speaking at the Cornerstone Baptist, Madison and Lewis Avenues in Bed-Stuy. There's some other good pictures, and we have more to the right there. You can't quite see it, but if you get the book, you'll see what it is. Next. We get into some politics. Here's Charlie Chisholm getting an award for the Brevoort Savings Bank, and also gave awards to kids that wrote compositions. And Daniel Diggs was a councilman, and he was under John Cashmore's wing, and he was very effective. He was born in Sumter County, South Carolina. I guess that must be near Fort Sumter, right? And he was 11th District, and he lived at 341 Halsey. I looked him up in the phone book. I tried to get as much information as possible in the books. Next. Robert Kennedy, he got the Bed-Stuy restoration movement. He wanted to do something in the community, and everybody was skeptical. Says, yeah, you white guys just keep coming to our neighborhood, promising us this, promising us that. Nobody does nothing. But they actually got stuff done in the community, forming this restoration. And the reason why Bed-Stuy is so well preserved today, a lot of it had to do with the money and effort that was put in to maintaining those beautiful brownstones that are in landmark districts today. Next. We talked about Williamsburg. Next. This is this picture. That's my father. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little mixed. I don't know. My girlfriend looks at this. She goes, "No way." What do you think, Pam? No. That's my dad. He passed 3 years ago. And this is PS 16, Wilson Street. My mom went there also, and that is in Williamsburg. We have a chauffeur who lived in Williamsburg. I found his license, which is dated 1910. I think. Yeah, it's an old one. And then we have People Street. Yeah, okay, next. Then we get into southern Brooklyn, Flatbush, Kensington, Flatbush Avenue at Cortelyou Road. That's a Brainerd photo, the glass of which resides in the Brooklyn Museum. They have all of Brainerd's negatives. And of course, Flatbush was, the people in Flatbush had slaves because it was agricultural. So there was a big slave population from the 18th century, pretty much waned out by 1800. But when it was made illegal, the price went down on slaves. So a couple of farmers actually said, wow, now's the time to get more, to do more work on my farm because the price went down. So they got like another 10 years, and by 1827 it was totally outlawed in New York State. Next. This is the Salem Baptist Church on Snyder Avenue. People don't think of Flatbush as having a black population prior to like the Haitians and Jamaicans that came like in the 70s and 80s. But there was a solid community near like Bedford Avenue behind Erasmus, long-standing. And this is part of it. This is a 1932 photograph by Percy Spear. And here is an Allen AME church. This is my swimming team when I was at Tilden High School. And that is me over there with the hair. And that's Jeffrey Lubell, who founded True Religion Jeans. He was a backstroker. I was a freestyle swimmer. I was captain. And that's back in 1973. Okay, next. Flatlands in Barren Island, where I lived. We have a slave list here. So you had slaves here, but in 1755, there was a total of 35 slaves in the entire town of Flatlands. But the population of Flatlands was maybe only 300 at that time. But if you see, it's basically, they would own one slave. They didn't have these tremendous, it wasn't like the Southern plantation system where you had, these farms of hundreds and hundreds of acres, or even thousands of acres of cotton or tobacco. These were smaller farms. Still could be a couple of hundred acres, but basically one slave, 2 slaves here by Skank. So it was not totally, infested with, a horrible influx like you had in the South, where you had, rows of slave dwellings on the plantation. You have dozens. That's why the South, it hurt them more when slavery was abolished, because they really, really had dependence upon that type of labor. This is a view of Kings Highway at the Canarsie Road on the East Flatbush Flatland section over there, 1907. Ben Maxix, the famous nightclub, some people remember it. Well, Sammy Davis Jr. was there on 1953. I have a picture of Ben Maxix. There's a woman on a bus stop on Avenue K and Utica Avenue. I saw a big negative I have, and I looked closely and said, oh, it's a black lady. And then I enlarged that section of the picture and put her in my book. She'll be immortalized forever. People on the way to Jones Beach, right here, in the car. We go to Canarsie. 1890, people taking the ferry to Rockaway. That's why it's called Rockaway Parkway through Canarsie. Next. Canarsie. Okay, you can go through, keep going. Gravesend is right here. Slave census in Gravesend, 34 slaves in the town. There was a black community there, drawn by Robin Ryder from memory. The West End train was between Harway and Cropsey Avenues at that time. There was a black community right over there. She was in like a freak show in Coney Island, and the Ryders, related to Gertrude Ryder Bennett, they have the house on Kings Highway, 22nd Street, the Bennett homestead. And this is from her book, Living in a Landmark. And they sort of rescued her from a freak show. Oh, that's eBay, somebody bought something. This is McDonald Avenue. This is after the Yusuf Hawkins killing. People did not like the verdict. That's by Borough Hall. That happened in Gravesend, that attack. Sheepshead Bay, of course, the racetracks employed many black jockeys back then before racing was outlawed by the governor in 1910. Next. Scenes in Sheepshead Bay. This is actually right over there by Emmons Avenue and at Sheepshead Bay Road, right by where the diner was, where they knocked it down. Next. Coney Island, where we are, and we could take a look at some of those pictures. Parachute jump, Coney Island. And by the way, the Coney Island section has got to be about 25 pages. I only showed like 1 or 2, but it's great. East New York and Bushwick. This woman lived on Willoughby Avenue. Look at this cute picture from 1920. Isn't that fantastic? Elton Street near New Lots Avenue in the fields. Friends, I love it. East New York, okay. Prospect Heights, he was an undertaker, black man. This is right where Barclays Center is, right in the corner. That's that L I was telling you about that came down Flatbush Avenue and turned on 5th. So this is the corner where Barclays is now. That's a subway station, right across from the old Long Island Railroad station, 1916. Next. Then we do a little bit on the Dodgers. And this is in the basement of Ebbetsfield, Willie Mays. Jackie Robinson, Jackie Robinson. Next, Western Brooklyn. Here's one of those dance things from Prohibition, right around the time of Prohibition. When did Prohibition end? 32? 33. So this is during Prohibition. You know they were serving alcohol here, right? Enrico Duran and his Santo Domingo Serenaders. Look at them, huh? The Cotton Club, Savoy Ballroom. So they played in Harlem. They were on the radio. You'd get it here. It's 50 cents for ladies. If you were a gentleman, it was $1. Is that like sex discrimination? Or I guess. Oh, and black fraternities, the Masons and all that stuff. Very big. And by the way, this is a mass installation, the American Legion, at the Madonna residence on Granary Plaza, that big apartment house there. That was built actually by it was a Columbus, the Knights of Columbus, American Legion. And that's a mass installation. These are Shriners from the Eureka Temple. This is also fraternal. They're big fraternal organization, and they still do. It still exists. And that's me and Clarence. I'm the guy with the glasses. And I put him on just for the picture. Like, what's his name? Who's the guy on TV just wears the glasses? Cooper, Anderson Cooper. He doesn't need the glasses. It just makes him look a little smarter. That's it. Any questions?
Very good.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Congratulations.
Lights on, please. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir, man in the glasses.
Other questions, actually.
Okay.
I'm curious if you ran across any photos or info in your research about colored infantry units formed during the Civil War.
I did not, this is not really that's a specialty, just on the Civil War units. I know Vogel sang, and also there was a couple of guys in Canarsie, the Holmeses, they're buried in Canarsie Cemetery. They were injured off in South Carolina. There's an island over there. It's mentioned in the book. My friend's parents actually have a house there. John's Island, South Carolina. In terms of a specific regiments, I didn't go through. It wasn't like you'd have a whole Brooklyn contingent in New York of just black people or anything.
There's in Evergreen Cemetery, there's a plot that's called the Frederick Douglass GAR, Grand Army of the Republic plot. The graves are almost all entirely deteriorated beyond recognition.
Wow.
That's really a shame. It would be great if
Yeah.
somebody.
Well, you know, you can do it too. I can't do it all. Thank you for volunteering. Yes, sir.
If Harlem is America's black neighborhood, is Brooklyn America's black county?
I don't know if it's called Harlem. Harlem like gets all that fame and stuff, but you know, there was a lot going on here in Brooklyn all those years too. But Harlem seems to be, that's where most of the people who are documenting stuff, the photo agencies, the press agencies, the newspapers. So if they wanted pictures of black people, they would just go to Harlem. They're not going to send anybody over to Brooklyn. Everybody was in Manhattan, the main photo agencies and studios, and commercial photographers and the big newspapers. So, you know, that's why we did this book, because, you know, Brooklyn is second fiddle like the Harlem is, but there was a lot happening in Brooklyn. And a lot of people were in both places. And the true Harlem Renaissance really took place in Paris. That was really a lot of the culture was happening, was in Paris. All those black artists were painting the stuff there, not in Harlem. Yes, sir.
Brian, were there slave auctions in the 1600s?
In the Buttonwood Tree down in Lower Fulton Street, there were actually slave auctions.
And the landed family, the main families.
Yeah. Most of the slave auctions were Lower Manhattan, from what I found.
They were slave owners.
Some of them, oh yeah, the Dutch.
And the large tracts of down the
Yeah, but it's not like they had dozens of slaves, like one or two, you know. And the Dutch really claimed, and I know they wrote the histories in the 19th century, but they claimed that they treated their slaves very well, and that they ate with them at the same table and did a lot. And even when the British came and saw that they were trusting the blacks to do all these things with them, like the British were saying, "What, are you crazy? Like, what are you doing?" But they really was. It was more of an intimacy in these towns over here. It was not. It was they called it was a softer form of slavery. Not to make it sound good or anything like that, but relatively speaking, you know, a lot of these people continued working for the families after they became free. You know, and they spoke Dutch. You know, they were involved. That was the culture. They were black Dutch people.
And tobacco was the main product, wasn't
Not
it?
here, not here.
In the Wallabout area.
No, I don't know about, I'm sure they grew some, maybe some pot, but not. No, it was more like cabbages and regular grocery produce. Yes, sir.
So you've developed the largest private collection of historic Brooklyn
I
photographs?
think I have at this
as
point.
I'm reading there. How did that collection happen? Like how?
It happened one picture at a time.
And where are you going to find those? Not that I'm gonna go to those same places.
Well, I hope
Just to
if
show
you don't want monkeypox, don't go there. No, I go to eBay. I buy negatives. I search Brooklyn negative, Brooklyn photo, Brooklyn cabinet photo, Brooklyn letterhead, Brooklyn billhead, Brooklyn map. For the last 20 years, I've gone to all the postcard shows.